This is the Wild Ohio podcast, where conservation meets conversation.
And Ohio's wildlife takes center stage. Join us as we discuss
wildlife conservation and outdoor recreation in the Buckeye State.
Welcome to Wild Ohio podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jordan Phillips, joined by
Abby Rodebeck, John Kaufman.
John Kaufman.
I didn't know who was going to say it first.
I know.
And today we have Stormy Gibson with us. Stormy, tell us a little bit about your position with the Division of Wildlife.
We see you're wearing a Wild Ohio or a Division of Wildlife shirt, so we know you've ended here. So how did you get here?
So I've been with the Division of Wildlife for about 4 years now, and I am the permit coordinator. So I issue the permits for the state of Ohio, except for hunting and fishing licenses. And so any other permit that you might get from the Division of Wildlife, I'm helping you and get those ready for you.
Which there's quite a bit of that, so that leads us to what we're going to talk about. And one of the things that we're really going to focus on with you and a lot of your expertise is the Born Wild, Stay Wild. And that's a campaign that we've been running for quite a few years and really ramps up in spring. John, you've got a lot of familiarity with this.
Busy time of year for wildlife officers,
sure
correct?
Is. Lots of phone calls, and Stormy gets a lot of them too.
Yeah.
Yes,
so,
I do.
Born Wild, Stay Wild. What is that about?
So the idea for Born Wild, Stay Wild is to keep the wild in wildlife. And so a lot of times in spring, it's when baby animals are being born, and a lot of people want to help these baby animals, but they don't need us. They don't need people to intervene. And so the education component of that is to make sure that people leave those animals in the wild and only intervene when it's really, really necessary. So unless there's an issue, something's injured, it's truly orphaned, that's when you want to try to get help for that animal. But other than that, let wildlife be wild.
I think of a common example as a deer fawn in a backyard garden or fence line, and coming across a deer fawn and you don't see the mother doe anywhere close, and you immediately think, well, something must be wrong, right?
Obviously it's been abandoned.
Absolutely. The movies give us this whole idea that animals need and depend on humans, and that's really not the case. Those baby fawns are put there for a reason, and I don't know why the doe thinks that under your grill is a great place, but I've seen it, I've had it. It happens. Or the yard where your dog is, and they'll have those babies lay down the first 18 days. Those babies cannot keep up with mom, and so she puts them in a safe place. We don't know what that safe place is, but she puts them in that safe place and has them stay there. And they'll stay there all day because she's out grazing. She doesn't want her smell to be there because they're kind of scentless, so they don't really have a scent, and so they're not going to get predators to them. And so what happens is she comes back at night, she feeds that baby, and then she leaves again. And so a lot of times people find these baby fawns and they take them. And that's really terrible on the fawn. Don't ever take wildlife and feed it, ever. That's the worst thing you can do for an animal. If you see a baby fawn, I always say monitor for 24 hours. If it's not up moving around, bleating, not bleeding, but making those baby fawn noises.
I didn't know that that's what that was called.
Distress call.
Yeah, distress call. They're okay. That is not a reason to intervene. And so leave them there, and more than likely, she's going to come back in the nighttime and feed, and then once that baby gets strong enough, she'll follow. And she'll follow mom wherever. Now, sometimes you have a dog in the yard, and so that is one of those cases where can you just leash your dog for a little while? Yeah. Or sometimes you have, it's in your garage. Maybe move it outside your garage. And one of the big old wives' tales is if you touch a baby animal, the mom won't come back. And that is totally a myth. They'll come back. The drive for mom and some dads are much stronger than our scent. And so just because you've touched a baby animal doesn't mean that it needs to be taken from the wild.
Stormy, one thing I want to throw out is you probably have seen it. A lot of people mean well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I think we could take some time if you could explain some of the pitfalls, why it's so detrimental to wildlife to start handling them and bringing them into the house.
So I've had a 25-year career in wildlife, and I'm very passionate about wildlife and saving wildlife. But more importantly, I'm more passionate about keeping it in the wild. And people will take baby animals from the wild. And once you take that animal from the wild, you're increasing its stress level by 10 times. I mean, we're predators. We look like predators. We look like they want to be eaten by us. And so that animal is scared. And so don't make it stressed. The next thing is everyone wants to feed a baby.
Yeah.
Everyone. I mean, you see a baby animal and they're made for our brains to love them. Their eyes are big, they're cute, they're fuzzy.
Yeah,
It's like,
absolutely.
oh my gosh, I
It's
just
kind of a human inclination.
right.
to
I just
want
want to feed it. Let me just
baby
feed
up.
it. And every wild animal and every really animal has specific formula for their milk. And so, if you're trying to feed cat's formula to something that is an herbivore, you're going to irritate and tear up its gut system. And, you're going to do more harm than good.
Born wild, stay wild.
Born wild, stay
Yes.
wild.
Observe, enjoy.
Take in the
And
moment.
I think I'm thinking of some of the common things that we see. So the deer fawn, that's probably the largest of the things that we see.
It's a big one.
So a chick falls out of a nest. I've always had questions about that, and what am I supposed to do in that scenario? Because you come across that fairly regularly in the spring and
Absolutely.
early summer.
So one of the things I always tell people is monitor, watch from afar. Don't come and stand because no animal is going to come over that animal. The other thing is if you really have questions, 1-800-WILDLIFE is a fantastic resource. We have great team members that help answer those questions to see if you really truly need to intervene. If you are really concerned about that baby fledgling, that baby bird falling out of the nest, first and foremost, if you have any cats, keep them indoors. That's one of the things that we want to make sure that we are doing is keeping our cats indoors, because our cats are not only a predator to those baby animals, you're also risking your cat's life by putting it outside. So make sure that you're keeping those inside. Oftentimes, a baby bird will fall out of the nest. If it's not naked and looks like doesn't have any feathers, then it's, a naked little baby,
right.
If it's not naked and has feathers, they need to be on the ground for a little while. They need to strengthen their legs. They need to strengthen their wings. If you're really concerned, you can put it up in a tree, a branch. If you can get it back in the nest, great. But it could be a fledgling, and he's just going to hop right back out and be on that ground. But lots of people will tell me, oh, I saw this baby bird and I went and picked it up and I heard all these big birds screaming and making all this noise. Well, that's the parents.
Encouraging.
They're upset that you're there bothering the baby.
Yeah.
And I tell people, normally if someone took your kid and took them home and then they're like, oh, this is not the kid I want, and would you want it back? Well, yeah, you would. And that's the same thing with wildlife.
Huh. So what happens, or what is your recommendation if you come across an animal that is truly in need? There's an injury, there's something going on.
Yeah. So one of the things, if you truly find an animal that's bleeding, that's injured, that's really, really needs help from a human, is we have a great resource. We have wildlife rehabilitators, and they are permitted with the Division of Wildlife, and they are individuals that have taken training, and they are legal. And we have a whole listing. We have an online map. We have an online listing that you can give a call to. They'll give great resource and information. The next thing I suggest is, if you can safely, you can, I try not to tell anyone to touch a wild animal because they are wild animals. And if you're injured, you're going to maybe try to bite. But if you can get it in a box and put it in a nice, quiet, dark place, that helps to decrease the stress. And get a hold of one of those wildlife rehabilitators and take that animal in. Another great resource, 1-800-WILDLIFE. They have a listing of those people, and then we have an online resource called Animal Help Now, and if you're out of state, because a lot of times people will be on vacation and they find an injured animal, that will give you rehabbers that are permitted in every state. Is that Animal Help Now?
So you deal with the permitting of that, but that's a standalone. That's just we help steer that individual that made that phone call to that resource.
Yep.
And then they work with that entity, whoever it may be, on what happens. I'm curious. I think there's probably some education that could be given on what occurs to the animal or the bird once it is deemed necessary to actually go to a rehabilitation facility, and really a little bit more of maybe what that means for that animal?
I spent 15 years of my life as a wildlife rehabilitator, and once that animal's admitted to a wildlife rehabilitator, they get an exam. So
Okay.
just like you go to the doctor,
Get a physical.
they get
Yeah.
a physical, and we evaluate as rehabbers. We evaluate that animal and we see what's going on with it, because a lot of times, it could be that obviously we see a wound or trauma or something, but there's lots of hidden things that we see that rehabbers can do. They work directly with a licensed veterinarian. So they're paired up with veterinarians in the state so they can give medical treatment to these animals. And then they are looking at how this animal is going to do for the rest of its life in treatment, or how are you going to be released. And so those are the kind of the things that they do. So these rehabbers that are within our state, they're volunteers with us. They don't get any federal state funding. And so that's one of those things where be kind, be patient. This is busy season. I mean, they could be getting 100 animals in a day and looking at those animals. So, as a person who is enjoying nature and out in wildlife, that's why rehabbers don't want to admit healthy orphans. They only want to admit the ones that need to be admitted.
Well, capacity has to become an issue at some point in time as well. So there's a lot that goes into that evaluation.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
How I imagine you get a lot of phone calls, or a lot of officers get phone calls around this time of year.
Absolutely.
Do you have what is the most common phone call you get regarding?
Both of the ones we've
Baby.
talked about already are huge on the list. Fawns, especially later into the year, you get into cutting hay season. If you're in a rural community, agriculture, you're going to see it there. But the birds in the yard, constant. And squirrels. We get a lot of squirrels and rabbits. When the mowers start coming out,
Yep.
Stormy, help me
Yep.
out. Yep.
So
Oh yeah.
rabbits
Yep.
are a huge rabbit nests. These animals are made to reproduce.
Mm-hmm.
They leave their babies in the yard, and they leave them for all day and come back and visit a couple times a night, kind of like fawns,
Yeah.
kind of like deer. They love to put their nests in dog yards.
Yeah.
The dog smell keeps down other predators, so they're not worrying about other predators that might want to eat them. This time of year, you always do a bunny check. Go out before you mow.
Yep.
The lawnmower's
Yep.
the predator.
That's the big
Yep.
thing.
Unfortunately.
Because most of the time, the dogs don't have any idea that the bunnies are even in their yard. Like, the bunnies have been there the whole time. Even if you have a fence, you have some sort of issue where the bunny's getting in under the fence.
Absolutely.
The dog has no idea. Now, there are some breeds of dogs that are a little harder on rabbits than others, but that doesn't mean that's a reason to take those bunnies out of the yard. You can always put a laundry basket over it during the day while your dog's out using the bathroom, the nest, and then take it off at night and let her visit.
Yeah, I think to explain, because I've found them over time, but to explain a bunny nest is that it's really a hole in the ground, and then there's the adult's fur that kind of packs in almost like a chimney top.
Sometimes.
And
Hole is
Sometimes.
probably a bit of an exaggeration.
Yeah.
Sometimes
It's like
it's almost a divot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a
And
small
then
indent in the ground.
those little guys are in there with that little white speck on their forehead, and it's tough when you do find one to not
'Cause
want
they
to
look
touch
really
and not
cute.
want to. Yeah,
You just
yeah.
want to pick them up.
And in 20 days, those babies are gone. I mean, they grow up in 20 days, and she's already had another litter. And so a lot of times people want to remove that nest. She's already pregnant. She's already developing new babies, and you don't know where the new nest will be. So just leave those there and continue on.
Yeah, I love the mower check, like going out
Yep.
before
Oh,
you start
for
the mower.
sure.
Because again, we're in March already, and it's warm and it's nice, and that grass is already starting to grow, and people are probably already itching to get the mower.
And kids love that.
Yeah.
Do a bunny check, like it's kind of like a egg hunt. You're out doing, and if it's they love to lay under like bushes, even daylilies, all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting to see where they put their nests.
Oh, that's a good way to get the family involved.
Yep.
Like little ones to check for bunnies.
Yep.
I'll have to remember that.
Just makes me want to mow less, like
Yeah,
shrink the yard down.
Yeah, a little
plant
bit.
natives, and
Yeah,
then you don't have to
yeah,
worry about your yard. Just
absolutely.
put all kinds of native plants out there.
So you talked a lot about what the function of wildlife rehabbers are. what are things that rehab facilities don't do?
So one of the things that wildlife rehabilitator facilities don't do is they're not going to be coming out and helping and assisting with adult deer. So that's really your local police department or wildlife officer. Adult deer are one of those species of animals that if they are truly injured or orphaned, you need to call a professional. And that's one of those animals that, I always, and I'm sure you too, Wildlife Officer Kaufman, is they can be quite dangerous.
Yeah,
and you want to make you want to make sure that you
been there. Yeah.
You want to make sure that you have a professional there.
Yeah.
And so that's when I would really recommend calling the Division of Wildlife is with adult deer.
And they're not going to come in, like if you have a skunk in your yard and you don't want skunks in your yard or groundhogs in your yard, they're not going to come out and remove that for you.
No. So wildlife rehabilitators don't do nuisance wildlife. And so nuisance wildlife is a whole different kind of concept. And that is something that we have professionals, nuisance control operators that work with the homeowner for animals that are deemed wild or nuisance.
I'll take this opportunity. Stormy, could you maybe tie in how those two worlds, maybe someone takes in a baby animal? Let's talk about raccoons.
Yeah.
What that downside to that?
Yeah, that's a big one. And so I don't think people understand the connection between the two. So they're upset that a raccoon's living in their attic and the hole is in the roof and the raccoon's just utilizing the hotel there.
Yeah.
And they have a professional nuisance control operator come out and trap the raccoon. And according to state law, they take it off property and they have to be humanely euthanized. Mm-hmm. Well, then the adult is gone, but then the babies start crying. And the homeowner is like, oh, but look, there's babies. Mm-hmm. Rehabbers are not allowed to rehabilitate nuisance wildlife, and that animal was a nuisance, and so is her progeny. Yeah. And so an easy way is to kick her out of the attic. She'll take her babies, and then you're not making that choice, because the hardest thing about the progeny is, are you willing to have them released back onto your property? And people are like, no, I don't want them. And it's like, well, those babies grow up to be adults.
And that's a law, right?
Yep,
you can,
that's
if they're not humanely put down, they're re-released on the property.
On site, yes. They can be released on the site. And so some homeowners will trap from the attic and will release on site and then complete the home improvement project or the hole and have those babies outside of that roof area. And the mom is, like I said, dedicated. She's already got 7 or 8 different spots that she's going to live in. And so there's lots of documentation about how raccoons have really made a great way of living amongst us in urban and suburban areas.
Yeah. Is there, or do you know the reason behind not like having to put down once they're removed? Like what's the...
So one of the things that we really in the state of Ohio are concerned about is disease control.
Absolutely.
And so we work really hard with a lot of different partners on keeping our rabies border secure. The eastern part of the state of Ohio has had positive rabies raccoon virus in raccoons. And so we work really hard with lots of our partners to help prevent the spread of rabies, because as the virus for a zoonotic issue, that means affecting humans, the mortality rate is 99.9%. And we really want to stop that rabies from spreading throughout the state of Ohio. And so moving wildlife from different locations is a really potential to spread diseases that we don't want other animals or those same animals to get.
Yeah, often when I deal with folks who have the nuisance issue, you talk about the disease, but also what you talked about is this animal knows this behavior.
Yeah.
That's what makes it a nuisance animal, whether it be getting into the barn and getting all the horse feed or whatever it is. And once they've learned that, they teach it to their prodigy, and that's all it is. So if you catch that animal and take it somewhere else, you've just made it somebody else's problem as well.
It comes down to mitigation of opportunities.
Yep.
So I think about skunks all the time this time of year. A lot of phone calls on, like, I smell skunk under my back porch.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you go in, you find the skunk den. And then you start working the mitigation of that, making sure the skunk is outside of the den, and then putting chicken wire, whatever it is, and that's where the nuisance permitting that we issue. That's where those companies can come in and give suggestions, recommendations, and even facilitate that work for someone that's calling them.
I love
the
what
goal
Stormy's-
of reducing human-wildlife conflicts.
Yeah. And one of the other things is when you move an animal and you move it to a different location, sure, could it survive? Yeah, but is that fair to the animal?
You're taking it to someone else's home. I mean,
Yeah.
there's already animals that have established a home range in that area.
And
there's
they
a
don't-
lot of things that people just don't get.
they don't get it. They don't understand territory. They don't understand habitat. Grammy's bird feeder is not around the corner like it used to be. And so that's one of those things where, for the good of the animal, think about the good of the animal.
So going back to the rehabbers or rehabilitators, which we commonly refer to as rehabbers. So you
In the
find an
biz.
animal that is in true distress. You have an animal that's, like you said, bleeding and broken. You take it to a rehabber, and what's their goal? What are they going to be? The end result.
Number one goal for a wildlife rehabilitator is release. Get that animal back to the wild. And so, we're evaluating, or they're evaluating, how well can this animal live in the wild? Can an animal live with only one toe?
Yeah.
Can an animal, do you have to have two eyes in order to, be able to hunt? Depending on the species, not necessarily, if for Virginia opossums, you don't really need two eyes. You can have one eye. You have a great sense of smell,
Yeah.
And so, it's an evaluation on each animal that comes in. So they really take the time to think about how that particular animal is going to be able to survive in the wild. And, wildlife rehabilitation isn't all about just rehabilitating the wild animal. It's really about educating the public. It's really about making that person feel good about what they did, having them be involved in the wildlife and in wild places, and having an idea of what is living amongst us, because a lot of times people don't know the difference between a European house sparrow and a warbler. But to be able to educate them about the differences of those animals. That's really, wildlife rehabilitators are really educators in disguise.
Absolutely.
In disguise.
Absolutely.
Now,
I've learned a lot working with you.
Good.
Yay.
and sometimes I see it at Glen Helen Raptor Center. Give them a little shout out. Obviously, they deal with raptors, and they have an excellent education program. So not only do they take in owls and hawks and eagles even that they can hopefully rehab and release, and they call me after I take one in, hey, we're going to bring one back and let it go in that area. But they have an excellent education system.
Yeah. A lot of our wildlife rehabilitators have education components tied to them. So they have an education permit as well. Would I say that the majority of animals that are non-releasable get transferred to education facilities? No. Maybe those very few ones will get transferred, and those are animals that the wildlife rehabilitator is evaluating, like, are you stressed? Do you eat in front of people? Will this life be okay for you as you continue on? But having both of those components as the wildlife educators and our wildlife rehabilitators, that is one of the other ways that the Division of Wildlife continues to put forth the mission, is through those individuals that hold those wildlife rehabilitators permits and educator permits.
So we've talked a little bit about some of the myths already, and the fact you mentioned you can't touch wildlife and then put it back. So we hear a lot, and obviously you've got a wealth of experience and knowledge within this. So what are some other myths that you would love to be able to address on things that you've heard kind of from the field?
Can I feed a skunk milk?
Oh, sure. We are the only mammal, really, that will drink another mammal's milk. So let that sink in. We drink a cow's milk.
That's an excellent piece of advice.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You have the compulsion to want to feed them.
Yes. And so like I think about it and they're like, well, cats will drink milk, but do they? We give it to them. But we're the only one that actively.
My cats don't.
Yeah. No, you shouldn't, because it's really bad for their gut system. And so most even humans are lactose intolerant, so we can't even digest the cow's milk, so you're trying to feed, an animal. The other thing is like if, some of the myths that we hear is, if a snake crosses your path, you're going to have bad luck. Well, if a snake crosses your path, it's really awesome because you don't see very many snakes.
I would be very excited.
And so,
I think some people would argue with you, Stormy.
I don't know if John shares that same sentiment.
I mean, I don't mind snakes, but I'm cool with him being
he has a healthy respect.
Yeah. So the other myth is, because you see a nocturnal animal out during the day, oh my gosh, they have to be sick.
Right.
And that's not the case. Yes, they could be sick, but when you start to think about a mom trying to feed her babies and she's out gathering food, she is out without other animals, males or territory, she's out gathering food. So it doesn't mean that she's sick. We get calls about skunks being out during the day. Okay. That's okay.
Absolutely.
Foxes being out during the day, raccoons being out during the day. All of those are very okay situations, because we have kind of modified their time that they're foraging. And, a lot of times people will say like foxes, for example, they're really worried about foxes and interaction between foxes, and people. And foxes are very small little animals. They weigh about 7 pounds. I mean, your house cat's going to be fatter than that guy.
Absolutely.
And they're out during the day a lot of times because they're avoiding the coyotes that are out more times during the night. Mm-hmm. And so they're gathering food to feed their kits. And one of the most amazing things about foxes is that both parents raise their babies. They both of them raise the kids.
Now, is that true in gray fox and red fox?
Yep, both gray and red.
I didn't know that.
Yep, so they are out raising their kits together. So, and then oftentimes I'll also hear there was a whole litter of baby foxes, baby skunks, baby raccoons. And if any of you guys are parents out there, when you leave the house or you go on vacation, you leave your teenagers at home, they're going to party. And that's the same thing with those baby animals. They're out having a great time,
It's stressing me out, her talking about kids left at home.
So they're out having a great time, and then they run back in, and they should run from you. The other myth is, I need to feed wildlife because they need me. Please don't feed wildlife except for bird feeders. I will accept bird feeders. But if you're feeding, something from your back porch and you're feeding the raccoons and the opossums and foxes and skunks, you are creating this whole mess of a huge area where there's lots of animals coming together and there could be disease issues.
We have a very dense deer population in the neighborhood I live in Columbus.
Yep.
So, and I know many people who have a lot of feelings about it. One of them, when I have discussions, is if you're feeding them, you're also attracting other things that you're not necessarily wanting.
Yep. And you are causing a larger population and more diseases. And so just think about that, like your kids at daycare, there's a lot of animals there, or a lot of kids there.
They bring it home.
Yep.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
I have a short story with the fox. Something you said earlier, Stormy, I really liked. Survey, take it in, give them 24 hours.
Yep.
What you monitor, I think, is the word you use.
Monitor.
So a farm that we hunt, we saw that there's an old scrap pile or a barn fell down, and there was fox. So we took a trail camera just to see and set it up. We checked that trail camera at the end of the summer, but we had all sorts of pictures. And that's just an opportunity for people to enjoy. If they have this on their property, there's ways to see it. Yeah, observe it and monitor it. Enjoy that wildlife. Don't necessarily have to get involved. Just look at it from afar.
Can you talk again about the different resources people can use if they have questions?
Oh, sure. So, obviously 1-800-WILDLIFE, that's the division's
That's our
info
line.
which is great. You can use our website. There is Animal Help Now, which is the website or online app that can connect you to rehabbers in your county or state. We're going to have an interactive map, online map.
Great.
For wildlife rehabilitators. It'll have a county drop down, so you can
that's awesome.
Yeah, you can specifically find your county, and then we'll also have specific, like if you found a bat, who is the closest rehabber that will take in bats or birds or waterfowl. So there's going to be a really great online map very soon to use to find that resource. But the biggest thing is. And if you do Google anything as a resource, please remember, do not feed the animal and leave it be. But look, there are some really good resources on there too, just using the internet, but don't feed it. Just please don't feed it.
Yeah.
Born wild, stay wild.
Born wild, stay wild.
As an officer, I'm going to jump in here. We get the call a lot. We're one of those resources in the county. People know us. We're going to refer folks to the places that you're talking about. If we have a rehabber close, they are well adapted to handle that situation. They have all the skills needed. So if you can reach out to them, you help us out too, because we're getting a bunch of calls in the spring as well.
John's busy.
We're all busy.
Yeah.
Everybody's busy.
Stormy, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's been cool because you've been on both sides. You've
Yes.
been on the side of being a wildlife rehabber, and now you work with the rehab facilities.
Yes.
Before that makes me think of something before
Yeah.
we let you go. If we have listeners who are thinking, I've had some people approach me in the past, I'm interested in this. Maybe I want to be a rehabber. How would they go about that?
Yeah, the first thing is contact me. I love to get emails. You can email me. And then the other way is that you need to take an introduction to wildlife rehabilitation course. Mm-hmm. And that gives you a good idea of what it is like to be a rehabber. And then I would always recommend contact your local rehabber and volunteer, because lots of people get in or want to get into rehab and not know what rehab really is.
Yep.
So get your feet wet.
Get
volunteer.
educated.
Yeah, get
And
educated.
a lot of those facilities run on volunteers.
Oh, yeah.
There's
Yeah.
small 501c3s. It's a lot of work. It's
Big
a lot of
hearts out there.
hours.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. And that's one of those things where, just get educated and keep wild and wildlife.
Yeah. So contact you. That's 1-800-WILDLIFE. Call into the call center, get your information. Again, this is Stormy Gibson with us, or we also have an email opportunity through our website to be able to get connected, and we can make sure that those emails get addressed to you, which you are clearly the right person for that. So
We have a Born Wild, Stay Wild page of resources as well.
Sure do.
So we hope you enjoyed today's episode. So for those of you that are new to the channel, please make sure that you subscribe, and we look forward to
Tell all your friends
you
to
telling your
subscribe.
friends and your family, and Abby stealing my thunder.
It's all good.
Until the next time, we hope to see you outdoors. So thanks again, Stormy. It was
Thanks,
great
Stormy.
seeing you.
Thank you.